What's going on, everyone? Happy Saturday. It's finally game day once again here in Columbia as South Carolina takes on the Akron Zips later tonight at 7:30 p.m. on ESPNU. But before then, if you're looking for a fun activity, a fun way to get involved in the game tonight before kickoff, PrizePicks has got you covered. And we are going to be running through some of their offensive player projections for the Gamecocks tonight, and I'll share some of my thoughts and opinions on that. But before that, I want to tell you guys a little bit about PrizePicks if you're unfamiliar with them. So, PrizePicks is the largest independently owned daily fantasy sports platform in all of North America. They're the easiest, most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. It's just you against the numbers. Instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, you pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 players' stat projections. And then, of course, watch the winnings roll in. PrizePicks has quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of players and stat types. It's what makes PrizePicks the number one daily fantasy sports app. I know I've used PrizePicks multiple times in the past. This has definitely been my way to go if I'm looking to have a little bit more fun, add a little extra juice to watching whatever game I've got on. And it's not just college football, it's NFL, baseball, NBA, college sports in general. It's literally just about any sport you could think of. It's probably going to be on PrizePicks. And that's the great thing about them. And that's why I love using PrizePicks whenever I can. So just go to prizepicks.com or download the PrizePicks app and use the code on screen, GC, which stands for Gamecock Central, to receive a guaranteed $50 once you play $5 in lineups. And as always, want to send our welcome and big thank you to our latest friend and sponsor, PrizePicks, and they are fantastic. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into some of the projections for South Carolina this week. There aren't a ton, but there's enough to where it's like you could make something of it and have a good time doing it. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and take a look at the player projections for this week. There's not a ton of them. It's only for 3 players this week, but I think there's a lot of options you could really pick from and feel confident in. And so let's take a look at what PrizePicks has to offer this week. And we're going to start out at quarterback. So funnily enough, there's no Lenore Sellers projections on here this week. And you may be thinking, Jack, where's he at? What happened? He's normally on here when you're doing these videos. Yeah, well, unfortunately, Sellers is not going to be starting tonight. It's going to be Robbie Ashford under center as Sellers had the ankle sprain injury last week against Kentucky. Fucking football, man. All right, and now we're going to go ahead and take a look at the offensive player projections for the Gamecocks this weekend against Akron. And PrizePicks has got a lot of good options here. Granted, it's only for 3 players, but there's enough variety to pick from to where you'll feel pretty happy with that, with whatever direction you decide to go. So let's take a look at what we got here this week. And funnily enough, there's no Lenore Sellers on any of these projections this week. And you may be asking, Jack, where is he? He's normally right at the top of these discussions that you have. And yeah, you'd be right. But unfortunately, this week, it does not look like Sellers is going to be playing at all, as Robbie Ashford, the backup quarterback for South Carolina, will be getting the start tonight against the Zips. And that is because if you missed last week's game against LSU, Sellers went down with an ankle sprain injury right near the end of the first half, and he only played one more series in the second half, but he just never really operated at the same level, if that makes sense. So precaution-wise, and the fact that the Gamecocks don't play again until October 5th because they have a bye week next week, I think it's the smarter move to hold Sellers out this week and prevent any further injury. But Robbie Ashford's got a lot of projections to look at. I'm just going to run down the list. His passing yards is set at more than or less than 172.5. His rushing yards, 34.5. His passing plus rushing yards, which means it's a combination of both, is more than or less than 218.5. And then you see the little green looking face thing next to passing touchdowns. That is what we call a goblin, and that is set at 0.5. So you can only go more than on that. But if you feel confident enough in Robbie throwing a passing touchdown tonight, that's your move right there. And then rushing plus receiving touchdowns. I doubt Ashford's going to be catching a touchdown tonight. I don't think any Philly specials are in the playbook for the Gamecocks tonight, but I could be wrong. And that is, you see the little red face that looks a lot more angry and mean is called a demon, and that is point 0.5 as well. So you can only take more than with that. However, I think with that, look, if you look at last week, Ashford ran the ball a lot more than he did throw. All right. There were some pass plays called. Shane Beamer has spoken about this, and so has Dow Loggins. But Ashford decided to take off and run. And that leads me to believe, just because we don't know much about what he's going to look like as a passer, we heard about in fall camp that he's a pretty good passer and he could throw the ball pretty well, but we really didn't see a ton of that last weekend. I mean, we saw it occasionally, but not consistently enough to where I feel good about taking more than on his passing yards. Anything that includes him throwing the football, I just don't know about yet. So maybe lean less than. Then again, it's like if he has a few explosive throws, he could definitely get there. I just don't know. But I feel a lot more confident in him running the football and running it effectively. I think Carolina is going to get in a lot of positions, especially in the first half, where they're near the goal line and in the red zone, and Robbie just takes off and runs and scores a touchdown. I think that's something we could definitely see tonight. But we're going to have to see. I mean, you could also go with, honestly, his rushing yards aren't too bad either, 34.5. The only thing that makes me feel hesitant about that is you have to factor in sacks, right? If he gets sacked tonight, that's automatically lost yardage. So, like, for instance, if he's at 0 yards and he gets sacked on the first play and it's like a 10-yard loss, he'll be at negative 10 rushing yards, technically speaking. But if he gets a lot of opportunities to run and he's running kind of like he did last week, but just a little bit better, it could be close. But again, the one I feel best about is the rushing plus receiving touchdowns on the demon play. And point 0.5, I mean, he only needs one touchdown to get more than. I'm definitely feeling the best about that one. Not saying he can't get any of these other ones here, but if you're asking me, and I have to choose one projection, that's probably the one. And I know it's the riskiest one, but I feel the best about it just because we've seen what Robbie can do running so far this season, and I feel like that is where I'm most confident. Now let's go ahead and move on to Rocket Sanders, who had a really massive game last week, and you see that reflected in these projections. I mean, I think last week his more than or less than for just rushing yards was somewhere. I think it was about 68 and a half, and boy, is it just about doubled, to be honest. It's gone up exponentially, and now you see it. For his rushing yards, it is 114.5. His rushing plus receiving yards is 126.5. And he's got a goblin, so that's the green little smiley face. That is rushing plus receiving touchdowns, and he only needs one. So I am feeling good about him. I feel like he is due for another big game. I mean, you missed it last week. He ran for 143 yards and 2 touchdowns while averaging 7.5 yards per his 19 carries against the Tigers last week. And this was a real breakout performance that I think a lot of people were hoping to see from him because he had two good games against Old Dominion and Kentucky, but not the Arkansas level quality play that he had been so, accustomed to doing when he was with the Razorbacks 2 seasons ago. And here's a good, interesting stat for you. He's only rushed for more than 100 yards in back-to-back games 3 times in his college career. So he had a lot of 100-yard games in college at Arkansas, mainly during that 2022 season. But he only went back to back 3 times doing that. So that means 100 yards or more in 2 straight games. And I think he can definitely do it again this week. I mean, you look at Akron's defense, they're giving up about 180 rushing yards per game right now. And I think that just leads me to believe that if he's given enough carries, that's the main thing. And you have to think about it this way. This is Akron we're talking about. I think a lot of people fully expect South Carolina to go out here and dominate tonight. And it wouldn't surprise me if they do. At the same time, you have to think about it this way. If South Carolina's up big in the first half and the game's pretty much in hand, I wonder when Carolina is going to be calling in the backups. And that's when you have to start thinking like, okay, do I take this? Because if Rocket's only playing, let's say he's only playing I don't know how many snaps. Let's say he's just playing the first half and the game's in hand. More likely than not, just to keep him healthy, South Carolina's probably not going to play him in the second half. So that's where you kind of have to be a little bit cautious with these. But I am feeling good enough to where you could feel confident about literally any of these. Like I would recommend taking more than on any of these three projections that I just talked about. The one specifically I'm feeling good about, and it wouldn't win you as much in results, I guess, in terms of money and all that. But the rushing plus receiving touchdowns, he had two last week on the ground. One was the 66-yard touchdown, and one was the really physical 10-yard touchdown that he had on the ground. I think he's going to get a touchdown tonight of some sort. I expect South Carolina to score enough points this weekend to feel pretty good about where the offense is at. And I feel like a lot of that's going to come on the ground. So I'm expecting Rocket to have a touchdown tonight. And then the rushing yards and the rushing plus receiving touchdowns, basically all purpose yards, that's a little more be cautious with it. But I feel like Rocket can definitely get either of those. And if this game's a little closer in the first half and you're heading into halftime and Carolina's only up by you hope not, but let's say they're up by maybe a touchdown, I think we're going to see Rocket in the third quarter. So I think he can definitely get there. It just depends on what the score is looking like and where things are at for him, because I think the other running backs are definitely going to get a lot of touches tonight. And our final projection we're going to talk about is for none other than South Carolina wide receiver Jared Brown, who is slowly starting to separate himself in that room. And he's only got two projections to look at. One of them is not on screen right now because when I was screenshotting this, unfortunately, you got the two Southern Cal players at the bottom. So that kind of took out a good way of showing all these. But nevertheless, I'll let you know what it is. His receiving yards tonight is listed at more than or less than 37.5. I think that's a great number for him. And he's also got a demon play, which is a rushing or receiving touchdown, and he just needs one. So I think with him, when I was originally figuring out, okay, how would I go about this? I thought, okay, he's going to have another big game because over the last two games, he's been really solid. He's had 7 catches for 98 yards, and he has been, averaging 14 yards per catch, and he's been awesome for this receiving group. And I mean, Dow Loggins was talking about earlier this week during his press conference. It feels like Jared is starting to separate himself a little bit in that room, and he's slowly becoming the top target in there. And I think that is definitely true because you see the way he's played over the last two games. He's been a very nice weapon to have for Lenore Sellers when he's starting at quarterback. However, Javier Ashford starting at quarterback tonight. How does that look? Because at least to my knowledge and from what I remember, I don't really remember seeing Jared Brown get a lot of targets in the offense in the second half when Robbie was in there. And that just makes me a little bit more. It's harder to go ahead and take more than on his receiving yards. If it was Sellers starting in there, I'd feel good about that because that's Sellers is one of his better targets that he likes to hit up. But you also have to factor in the fact that Brown got injured on I think it was the 39-yard catch he had at the end of the first half last weekend, and he's going to be a game time decision tonight. So if he was fully healthy, I'd feel good about him on his receiving yards. But there's also a lot of other guys in this offense that are going to try to get involved, especially at receiver. And so that, with his health, with Ashford under center, I would feel you can go about this however you want, but I would lean towards less than on both of these right now. Now, if he's healthy and ready to go, we should know probably about, I would say, a little bit before kickoff, we should know what his status is going to look like when the team's going through warm-ups and stuff, and if he's out there in full pads. If he is, great, maybe take it, because I'll tell you what, if you were to take his projection, either more than or less, it doesn't matter, and he doesn't play a single snap, it would not count against you. So you can you can go with it. And if he plays and he doesn't do much, okay, that's just bad luck, I guess. But if he's out there and he just doesn't play at all, and you were to take his projection, it wouldn't go against you. So that is a nice little thing to feel okay about. But at the same time, if I'm going to take any of his projections right now, I'm leaning towards less than, just because there's so many more uncertainties as to where it's not. I mean, if Sellers is in there, if he's healthy, and if Brown's healthy, I'd feel a lot better about this. But for right now, gonna play it safe and probably go with less than on those. And so that is going to do it for all the Gamecock projections. But there is one more projection that I did talk about last week, and it is reoccurring this week. Look, I know Caleb Williams, Chicago Bears quarterback, has not been really that impressive so far, right? I mean, his first start was not very, promising. His second start was better, but it was also like there's still a lot to work on. However, the fact that he is a quarterback in the NFL, he should be able to throw for more than 1 yard. And PrizePicks is running a great offer, which means so Caleb Williams' projection for passing yards has gone down significantly to just point 0.5. So if you go on to PrizePicks, that's probably going to be the first thing you see, because NFL is usually the first line of projections you'll see on screen. And Caleb Williams is right up at the top with a .5 passing yard. It's basically a free win, in my opinion, unless he just gets hurt or whatever the case is on the first snap of the game. It should be a great opportunity to get off to a good start with whatever slew of projections you decide to put together to try to create a winning formula. And why not include the Bears franchise quarterback right now, Caleb Williams? It's a great opportunity and definitely one I recommend taking advantage of. So that is going to do it for all projections for the Gamecocks this week. And I'll be continuing to do this every single week as long as there's Carolina football. Next week's a bye week, so maybe we'll do a little something different. Not sure yet, but that is going to do it for now. So once again, South Carolina plays Akron tonight at 7:30 p.m. on ESPNU, and I'll be there providing coverage throughout the day and night. And if you are going to go ahead and try to have a little bit more fun with college football tonight, I highly suggest using PrizePicks, and it is a great opportunity to do so this evening. So that's going to do it for now. Have a great weekend, guys, and I'll see you again soon.